Hello Crafty Crandall fam. In today's video, we are trying another art book tutorial. Today's book is going to be the Watercolor Flower Painter's A to Z Guide by Adelene Fletcher. I am so excited to try one of these tutorials. I was just on a walk and I am very inspired to paint an iris. So I pulled out this book and I'm going to follow the tutorial and I am so excited about it. For the paint that I'm going to use, I pulled out an oldie but goodie. I have not used my Kuretake Gansai Tambi paints in quite some time. I am very excited to pull them out and use them for this video. It has been a very long time and I feel like they go neglected in my shelf because I have so many watercolors now, but I really want to use them today and just kind of dust them off. I think it might be the first time I'm using them on this channel, so that is very exciting. And without any further ado, let's get into the tutorial. The first step in the instructions is to start with a sketch. Now, these instructions are rather specific to this iris because of the way that they construct it. They explain where the shadows are and all of that. But what they don't do is provide the reference photo that this is from. And I want to work off of like an actual reference of a real flower. So I have here a reference of an iris photo that I took myself, just of an iris out in the wild. So I'm just going to try to draw this one iris with this stalk here. So that's what I'm going to be painting. So my colors will look different than the reference, but hopefully I can use some of their tips and tricks for kind of constructing some of these veins and also mixing the colors that are similar in my reference to theirs. They also give some really great painting tips here as to technique, so I'm going to be trying those techniques in my illustration as well. The primary purpose of the sketch was simply to get the shapes down so that the painting had some forms to follow during the process. I tried to be extremely loose with this sketch and found myself rather successful as opposed to how I normally am with sketching, which is very regimented as I try to get the reference exactly right, or as exact as I can. So this was kind of a really fun break from that, trying to be extremely loose and just get the general shapes onto the page as the book suggests is what you want. Overall, again, I think I did this pretty well and am interested to see where it goes. All right, I have my sketch here. I'm actually really happy with how it turned out, and I think it'll be a good basis to start painting. The first instruction is to start with the yellow that shows up right in the middle here, and a little bit up here. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the yellow. It says to start with the lighter yellow and then build it up with another layer of yellow, and then eventually we'll end up leaving some white space for all of the little veins in the flower as well. Overall, I found that the tutorial instructions were very helpful as far as the color picking and making sure that I was choosing the correct colors and varying my colors in the correct way, so adding the correct colors to make new colors. The color mixing process that I underwent for this painting took some time. You'll see here that I struggled to get the initial colors as they were not as the book suggested because I decided to use a different reference, but once I got there I think that they matched relatively well, and the book's suggestions for various color mixing options did help immensely. Additionally, I really utilized the white paint, which is something that I never would have used to do, but I recently discovered that this can be actually a very helpful tool in watercolor, even though typically I would have strayed away from it and simply made my colors lighter with more water. The first thing that the book said to do after finishing the yellow and letting it dry, which as you can see I didn't really let it dry, was to do your first wash on your petals and add the shadows in using the wet on wet technique. So that is what I attempted to do here, and I think it turned out okay. I am pretty happy with how that first step looks. I'm going to go ahead and let this fully dry before continuing. As you can see, I did have a bit of a bloom form in the yellow because I got too close to it, but I'm going to just see how that looks because honestly, in the reference photo, there is like a little bit of purple color in the yellow, so I'm not overly concerned about it. Now that the base petals have their first wash of color, the instructions say to move on to the top petals and start adding the base color up there as well, so that you get both layers started at once. I talk about this a little bit later, but some of the instructions were not as clear as far as how you wanted to layer the colors. It just kind of went over specific petals at a time, which was fine, but I found myself wishing that it talked a little bit more in layers. Additionally, some of the terminology that this book uses was a little bit confusing. As someone who didn't go to school for watercolor and has never taken a watercolor class, I feel like I didn't know some of the words that they were using, so I had to rely on Google. And maybe they were covered earlier in the book, but starting in the middle, I did not find the terminology very helpful to sorting it out. All right, so step 2 was to darken up the shadowed areas and also just bring out some more of the color. So I added some red to my mixture and tried to just bring out some more of the red tones, and then I painted in just the areas here that were shadowed. I'm now going to start on just this part because I can do it while this part is drying. So I'm going to start, like it says, with the yellow color and then slowly work that into a green over time. So I'm just trying to keep in layers. The instructions don't really keep it in layers. They kind of go based on like part of the flower. So like basically you're doing this part first, then this part, then at the end you're doing the leaves. But personally, I prefer to work in layers, and so I just try to paint wherever I can that's like not wet. And that's just how I approach this painting. So I'm kind of skipping around the instructions to find the areas that I can work on now and just following those specific instructions for that part of the flower. I am curious if any of the rest of you who are artists who are watching do this as well. Do you find yourself reading various tutorials and things or watching them online and trying to vary them to suit your typical art style, or do you tend to follow tutorials exactly to the letter? How would you have approached this tutorial? I felt disserviced by not having a proper reference photo of a real thing to follow. Would you have followed the tutorial as it was written with the painting reference that was given in the book? I'm just curious to know because personally I like to try as best as I can in most cases to draw from life or real life things that are photographed as opposed to drawing from someone else's drawing. I find it very difficult to morally not follow someone else's drawing when I'm drawing from their reference, if that makes sense. I just feel like that's copying and it's not something that I really want to do. Like if I get some stylistic elements from someone else's style, or if I'm really inspired by someone else's work, that's one thing. But using their painting or their drawing as a reference itself for one of my drawings just doesn't feel right. So that's why I chose to approach this tutorial in the way that I did, even for a video on an art book tutorial. I would be really curious to hear your feedback on that, and will be curious to see if anyone else would have taken the same approach as I did, or if you would have been perfectly comfortable following the tutorial as it was written. This is for the purpose of learning, so I feel like it is totally fine to do that, especially if you're not going to be like me and post it on the internet. But in this case, because I was making my own video about it, it didn't feel right. So let me know your thoughts down below. Additionally, let me know your thoughts on this painting. Personally, I think that it actually turned out pretty well. I was pleased with it, and it definitely kind of satisfied my desire to paint an iris. These flowers are just so beautiful and so inspiring every time I see them out in nature, and so I really just wanted to depict one before they're all gone and they die, because already with the rain that we've gotten and with the summer progressing, they have started to die off. So I will be seeing fewer and fewer of them, but at least in my sketchbook I have a memorialized iris to look back on and hopefully can improve on in the future through further passes at this, trying different types of irises and hopefully taking some decent reference photos in the future so that I can try this again and make an even better one in the future. Something I definitely feel like I could have improved on is my shadows. I think that I was afraid to add too many different colors and didn't really add the blues that it necessarily needed to get those deeper shadows. This is something that I will continue to work on and am sure to, be aware of when I paint in the future for shadowed areas. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do really appreciate your time and attention and would love to hear your feedback in the comments below. Feel free to give this video a like, consider subscribing to my channel, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thank you so much. Have a great day wherever you are in the world. Bye!